On Christmas Eve, I drove through a blizzard to my daughter's house in Portland, expecting to celebrate the holiday with family. Instead, I found my 16-year-old grandson Ethan sitting in the garage in 8/8 weather, wearing nothing but a hoodie and jeans, his lips blue and his whole body shaking. Through the window, I could see the whole family laughing around the dinner table, eating prime rib and drinking wine in the warmth. The rage that filled me in that moment was colder than the storm outside. I kicked down that garage door and spoke 6 words that made their faces go white with terror. But that was only the beginning of the reckoning that would change all our lives forever. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is where you are now. My phone buzzed against the steering wheel mount. A text from my neighbor in Bar Harbor. Crazy storm tonight. Be careful driving south. Roads are hell. I squinted through the windshield at the wall of white ahead of me. Danny wasn't exaggerating. This wasn't just snow. It was a full coastal blizzard. The kind that shut down entire towns and left people stranded for days. The kind Dorothy used to worry about before the Alzheimer's took her ability to worry about anything at all. The dashboard clock read, already getting dark, and I still had 40 minutes to Rebecca's house if the roads didn't get worse. My Ford F-150 handled snow better than most vehicles, but even 4-wheel drive had its limits when you couldn't see 10 feet ahead. Classic rock played low on the radio. CCR. Have you ever seen the rain? The irony wasn't lost on me. Dorothy and I used to drive to Portland every Christmas Eve, back when she could still remember what Christmas was. Now it was just me and this gnawing feeling in my gut whenever I thought about Rebecca's new husband. The passenger seat held 3 wrapped gifts: a fishing reel for Ethan, the expensive kind he'd been eyeing at Bass Pro Shop, a model ship kit we could build together, a replica of the USS Constitution, and a book about naval history that I'd annotated with stories from my own 20 years in the service. 16 years old now, getting tall, getting quiet. The last time I'd seen him was Thanksgiving, and something had been off. The way he'd flinched when Marcus raised his voice, the way he'd barely eaten dinner, pushing food around his plate like a prisoner, counting the minutes until he could escape. I'd asked Rebecca about it later, and she'd waved it off with that tight smile she'd developed since the wedding. Dad, Ethan's just adjusting to having a stepfather. Marcus is strict, but it's good for him. Boys need structure. Structure. That's what she'd called it. The windshield wipers fought a losing battle against the accumulating snow. I'd been driving for 2 hours from Bar Harbor, and the last hour had been pure white-knuckle concentrate. Other drivers had given up, their hazard lights blinking from the shoulder like shipwreck survivors, signaling for rescue. But I was Navy. We didn't give up when conditions got rough. Exit 52 appeared through the snow. Finally, I took it carefully, feeling the truck slide slightly on the ice beneath the fresh powder. Portland streets were slightly better, plowed at least once today, but the storm was winning. Snow piled up against storefronts and buried parked cars. I tried calling Rebecca's house, wanted to let them know I was close, that I'd made it through the storm. The phone rang 8 times before going to voicemail. Strange. On Christmas Eve, someone was always home. A gas station materialized through the white curtain, its lights like a beacon. I pulled in, filled the tank, might need it if I had to drive back tonight, and went inside for coffee and some of those chocolate-covered pretzels Ethan liked. The clerk, a middle-aged woman with tired eyes, shook her head at the storm. You got far to go? Just to Deering, I said. Family Christmas. Better hurry. They're saying this storm's gonna get worse before it gets better. Already had 2 accidents on Forest Avenue. Back in the truck, I checked the time again. 5:35 p.m. The drive usually took 15 minutes from here, but tonight it would be longer. I thought about Ethan, probably helping his mother in the kitchen, or maybe playing video games with his stepbrother Dylan. The kid had shot up 3 inches since summer, all gangly teenager energy. That's when I'd first noticed the changes, not just physical growth, but something else. The way he'd become careful around Marcus, the way he'd stopped talking about school or his friends, the way his eyes had developed this watchful quality, like a sailor constantly checking the horizon for storms. I should have asked more questions, should have pushed harder when my gut told me something was wrong. Dorothy would have known what to do. She'd always had better instincts about people than I did. 20 years commanding ships had taught me strategy and discipline, but Dot understood heart. The snow kept falling as I turned onto Rebecca's street. Suburban houses lined the road, each one decorated with Christmas lights that created rainbow halos in the storm. Most driveways had been plowed, though the snow was already filling them in again. Rebecca's house appeared at the end of the cul-de-sac, the two-story colonial with dark blue siding and white trim. Marcus's BMW was in the driveway covered with snow. Rebecca's Subaru beside it. Warm light glowed from every window, and I could see the Christmas tree twinkling through the front window. Everything looked perfect. Hallmark card perfect. I pulled into the driveway and sat for a moment, engine running, listening to the wind howl around the truck. The house looked warm and inviting, exactly what a family home should look like on Christmas Eve. But something felt wrong. Maybe it was my years at sea, learning to read weather patterns and sense danger before it arrived. Maybe it was just the instinct of a man who'd loved and lost too much to ignore his gut anymore. I turned off the engine and grabbed the gifts from the passenger seat. The cold hit me like a physical blow when I opened the door. Not just cold, but that bone-deep, dangerous cold that could kill you if you weren't careful. The kind of cold that turned fingers black with frostbite and made hypothermia set in faster than most people realized. -8 degrees the truck's external thermometer had read, with the wind chill probably closer to -20. I made my way carefully up the driveway, my boots crunching through 6 inches of fresh powder. The front walk hadn't been shoveled, strange, since Marcus was usually meticulous about yard maintenance. The porch lights were on, and I could hear music from inside. Something classical, maybe Handel. I raised my hand to knock, then paused. There was a sound coming from the garage, faint, barely audible over the storm, but I'd spent 20 years learning to distinguish between normal ship sounds and something wrong. This was something wrong. A whimper, or maybe a cough. Human, definitely human. I set down the gifts and moved toward the garage door. It wasn't fully closed. There was a gap of maybe 2 feet at the bottom, just enough to let the brutal cold pour inside. "Hello?" I called out, crouching down to peer into the darkness. Movement. A shape in the shadows hunched against the far wall. "Who's there?" My voice came out sharper than I intended, command voice from years of ordering men into action. The shape moved again, and then I heard it clearly this time, a voice I'd know anywhere, even broken and shaking with cold. "Gee, Grandpa." My blood turned to ice water. I grabbed the garage door handle and yanked it up with all the strength my 71-year-old arms could muster. The door resisted, frozen in place, or maybe locked from inside, but Navy training and adrenaline made me strong enough to force it. The door flew open, and there he was. If this story reminded you of the injustices you've seen, follow the channel and turn on notifications, because wherever justice is delayed, a new revenge story begins. My grand 16 years old, and sitting on the concrete floor of an unheated garage in the middle of a blizzard, wearing nothing but a thin hoodie and jeans. His arms were wrapped around his knees, his whole body shaking so violently I could see it from 10 feet away. His lips had gone past blue to a grayish purple that made my heart stop. Jesus Christ! I was across the garage in 3 strides, already pulling off my heavy peacoat. "Ethan, how long have you been out here?" He tried to answer, but his teeth were chattering so hard he couldn't form words. I wrapped my coat around him and pulled him close, feeling how cold he was even through the layers of clothing. This wasn't just uncomfortable, this was life-threatening. "Come on, son, let's get you warm." I tried to help him stand, but his legs wouldn't support him. The shaking was too violent, his muscles too cold to function properly. Hypothermia, stage 2, maybe stage 3. I'd seen it before in sailors who'd fallen overboard in the North Atlantic. They'd have maybe 30 minutes before their core temperature dropped, so low their hearts stopped. "I can't," Ethan managed through chattering teeth. Marcus said, "I can't come in." The words hit me like a fist to the gut. Through the small window that connected the garage to the mudroom, I could see into the kitchen, warm golden light. The dinner table visible beyond, set with fine china and crystal glasses. I could see Marcus at the head of the table, raising a wine glass in toast. Rebecca beside him, smiling. Dylan, the 12-year-old stepbrother, laughing at something. They were having Christmas Eve dinner. While my grandson froze to death 15 feet away. "What do you mean you can't come in?" I kept my voice calm, but inside I was calculating distance to the house. Size of Marcus compared to me. How many people were inside who might interfere? "I broke his rules," Ethan whispered. "Had to learn responsibility." I looked at the boy in my arms, really looked at him. Now that my eyes had adjusted to the garage's dim light, I could see more. Bruises on his arms, partially hidden by the hoodie's sleeves, a healing cut above his eyebrow. The way he held his left side carefully like breathing hurt. This wasn't the first time. This was a pattern. "How long, Ethan?" I pulled him closer, trying to share my body heat. "How long have you been out here?" "Since noon, maybe earlier." "I don't know." 6 hours. 6 hours in sub-zero weather that could kill a grown man in his prime, let alone a skinny teenage boy. "What did you do? What was this rule you broke?" "Dylan's new G game. The expensive one Marcus G got him for Christmas. I was playing it and I accidentally scratched the disc." His voice was getting weaker, words slurring. "Bad sign." Marcus said, "I had to think about being more careful with other people's things." A scratched video game disc, maybe $40 to replace, and Marcus had left a child to freeze to death over it. I looked through that window again at the warm family scene, at my daughter, who I'd raised to be strong and kind and smart, sitting there eating prime rib while her son died in the garage. At Marcus Coleman, who I'd never liked but had tried to accept for Rebecca's sake, raising his wine glass like he didn't have a care in the world. The rage that filled me then was colder than the blizzard outside. It was the controlled, focused rage of a man who'd commanded ships through combat, who'd made life and death decisions under fire, who knew exactly how to turn fury into effective action. "Ethan," I said, my voice steady as steel, "I need you to trust me. Can you do that?" He nodded, barely. "I'm going to get you out of here. Not just out of this garage, out of this house, away from him. But first, I need to go inside and have a conversation with your mother and Marcus." "No." Ethan's hand gripped my arm with surprising strength. "Grandpa, please. If you make him angry, he'll make it worse later. There isn't going to be a later, son. Not like this. Not ever again." I helped Ethan to his feet, keeping my coat wrapped around him. His legs barely worked, but I held him steady. We made our way to the door that connected the garage to the mudroom, the same door they'd locked to keep him out in the cold. I tried the handle. Locked, of course. Fine. I'd kicked down doors before, cargo hold doors, jammed hatches, doors that stood between my men and safety. This was just one more. I positioned Ethan against the wall where he could lean for support. "Cover your ears, son." Then I took 2 steps back and drove my boot into the door just beside the lock. The first kick made it shudder. The second one splintered the frame. The third one sent it crashing open with a bang that echoed through the house. The music stopped. The laughter died. I stepped through the doorway into the warmth. Ethan supported against my side and looked at the shocked faces gathered around the dinner table. Rebecca had gone pale, her wine glass halfway to her lips. Marcus was half standing, his face already flushing red with anger. Dylan had dropped his fork, mouth open, and at the far end of the table, Marcus's elderly mother, who I hadn't even known was visiting, clutched her napkin with white-knuckled hands. The table was beautiful, prime rib roast in the center, still steaming, roasted vegetables, fresh bread, chocolate cake waiting on the sideboard, crystal and china and silver catching the candlelight, a feast fit for kings while my grandson froze to death in the garage. I looked at each of them in turn, letting them see the cold fury in my eyes. Then I spoke 6 words that made every face at that table turn pale with terror. You left him to die. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the storm outside seemed to pause, as if the universe itself was waiting to see what would happen next. Marcus found his voice first. Now wait just a minute. No. The command voice I'd used on bridge decks during storms cut through his words like a knife. You wait. You sit down, shut your mouth, and you wait. Rebecca stood up, her chair scraping against the floor. Dad, this isn't what it looks like, isn't it? I looked at her. At the daughter I'd raised alone after her mother's illness. At the girl who used to climb into my lap and ask me to tell stories about ships in the sea, then explain to me what it looks like when a child sits in a freezing garage for 6 hours on Christmas Eve while you eat dinner and drink wine. He was being punished, Marcus said, his voice tight with barely controlled anger. He deliberately destroyed Dylan's property, a $100 video game system that scratched a disc. I interrupted, my voice deadly quiet. He accidentally scratched a $40 disc, and your response was to leave him in sub-zero weather long enough to die from exposure. He could have come in any time if he'd apologized and shown some remorse. Marcus straightened his shoulders, trying to reclaim authority in his own house. I'm teaching him responsibility, something clearly lacking in his upbringing. The insult to my daughter barely registered. I was too focused on the man who'd nearly killed my grandson. Responsibility, I repeated softly. Is that what you call child abuse? Child abuse? Marcus laughed, but it sounded forced. That's ridiculous. He's fine. A little cold never hurt anyone. I looked down at Ethan, still shaking violently against my side, lips purple, barely able to stand. He has hypothermia, stage 2, maybe stage 3. His core temperature has dropped dangerously low. Do you have any idea what that means? The table was silent now. Even Marcus had stopped talking, though his jaw was tight with anger. It means his body is shutting down. It means his heart could stop beating at any moment. It means you left a child to die over a scratched disc. Rebecca made a small sound, somewhere between a gasp and a sob. Ethan, baby, are you okay? Don't, I said flatly. Don't pretend to care now. You sat here eating dinner while he froze. You heard him in that garage and did nothing. Marcus said. She started. I don't care what Marcus said. You're his mother. His protection comes before your husband's rules. I could feel Ethan getting heavier against me, his body giving out. We didn't have time for this conversation. He needed warmth, needed it now, or he wouldn't survive the night. Rebecca, I said, my voice softening slightly. I'm taking Ethan to the hospital. Then I'm taking him home, to my home, and he's not coming back here, not to this house, not to him. I looked at Marcus with pure contempt. You can't just take him, Marcus said, standing up fully now. He was bigger than me, younger, probably thought he could intimidate an old man. This is my house. He lives here. You have no legal right. I have every moral right. And unless you want me to call the police and have them document what you did tonight, you'll let me walk out that door with my grandson. The police, Marcus laughed again, but this time there was uncertainty in it. You're going to call the police on me for disciplining a child in my own home? No, I said calmly. I'm going to call them to report child endangerment, reckless endangerment, and potentially attempted manslaughter. Because if Ethan dies tonight from hypothermia, that's exactly what you'll be charged with. The color drained from Marcus's face. You're overreacting, he said, but his voice had lost its confidence. He's fine. Look at him. He's standing right there. He's standing because I'm holding him up, and he won't be fine unless I get him warm in the next 30 minutes. I turned to Rebecca. You have a choice to make right now. Your son or your husband, because I'm leaving with Ethan in 60 seconds, and I need to know. Are you coming with us, or are you staying here? Rebecca looked between me and Marcus, her face streaked with tears. Dad, please don't make me choose. Life made you choose when you let your husband nearly kill your son. I'm just asking you to acknowledge it. The old woman at the end of the table, Marcus's mother, finally spoke up. Her voice was thin and wavering. Marcus, what is this man talking about? What did you do to that boy? Mother, stay out of this. Marcus's voice was sharp. This is between me and I'll stay out of nothing. Did you leave that child in the garage in this storm? The silence was her answer. What would you do at this point? Write it in the comments. Your thoughts are as important as the story itself, sweet Jesus. The old woman stood up, her hands shaking. Marcus William Coleman, what in God's name is wrong with you? He needed to learn. He needed to be safe. Her voice rose, surprising everyone. He needed to be warm and fed and loved, and you left him to freeze like an animal. I didn't wait to hear more. Ethan was fading fast, his eyes starting to lose focus. I shifted my grip on him and started toward the front door. Wait, Rebecca called out. Dad, wait, I'm coming with you. I paused and looked back at her. I'm coming with you, she repeated, already moving toward the coat closet. Just let me get my coat and... No, you're not. Marcus's voice was cold steel. You're staying here with your family, with me and Dill. Rebecca stopped, frozen between the closet and the dinner table. Rebecca, I said quietly, make your choice. She looked at Marcus, then at Ethan shaking in my arms, then back at Marcus. I could see the war happening behind her eyes, years of conditioning, fear of being alone, fear of starting over, all battling against the basic instinct to protect her child. She started, then stopped. I need time to think. No, I said flatly. You don't. Your son is dying. There is no time to think. I turned and carried Ethan toward the front door. Behind me, I heard Rebecca sob, but I didn't hear footsteps following. She'd made her choice. The blizzard hit us like a wall when I opened the front door. Snow and wind and cold, it made the garage seem warm by comparison, but my truck was running, heat on full blast, only 30 feet away. Hang on, son, I whispered to Ethan. Just hang on a little longer. Behind us, Marcus appeared in the doorway. If you take him, I'll call the police. I'll report you for kidnapping. I looked back at him. This man who'd nearly killed my grandson over a scratched disc. You do that, and I'll make sure they know exactly what you did tonight. I'll make sure everyone knows. I carried Ethan to the truck and got him into the passenger seat, cranking the heat even higher. His eyes were closing, head lolling against the seat. Stay with me, Ethan. Stay awake. I pulled out my phone and dialed 911 as I started driving toward the hospital. Through my rearview mirror, I could see Marcus standing in the doorway, silhouetted by the warm light of the house. I could see Rebecca behind him, watching us drive away into the storm, and I knew that this Christmas Eve would change everything forever. For better or worse, nothing would ever be the same. The emergency room doors slid open with a pneumatic hiss, and a blast of warm air hit us. I half-carried, half-dragged Ethan through the entrance while a nurse at the triage desk looked up with practiced concern that instantly shifted to alarm when she saw my grandson's condition. How long has he been exposed? She asked. already moving around the desk and waving for assist. 6 hours. Unheated garage. Temperature was -8 before wind chill. Her eyes widened. 6 hours. Jesus. Get him to trauma too. Now. Everything happened fast after that. Ethan was whisked away on a gurney, surrounded by nurses and doctors calling out medical terms I didn't fully understand. Core temperature, cardiac monitoring, warming protocols. A doctor who looked too young to be out of medical school took Ethan's vitals and shook his head. 88.3 degrees, he said to a nurse. Severe hypothermia. Get the bear hugger and start warm IV fluids. Watch for arrhythmias. I stood there in the hallway, my peacoat still wrapped around Ethan's shoulders as they rolled him away, watching the trauma team work with efficient urgency. A nurse appeared at my elbow, older woman with kind eyes and gray hair pulled back in a practical bun. Sir, are you family? I'm his grandfather, Thomas Reed. Come with me. We need information for his chart. She guided me to a small consultation room off the main ER corridor. How did this happen? I told her everything. Not the edited version, not the version that would protect anyone's reputation. The truth. Christmas Eve dinner. The locked garage. Marcus Coleman's idea of discipline. 6 hours in sub-zero weather over a scratched video game disc. Her expression went from professional concern to barely controlled anger. And the boy's mother? Where is she? At home with her husband? Something flickered in her eyes, judgment maybe, or recognition of a pattern she'd seen too many times before. I need to ask you some questions, Mr. Reed. Have you noticed any other injuries on Ethan? Bruises, cuts, anything that seems inconsistent with normal teenage activity? Yes. Bruises on his arms, healing cut above his eyebrow. He was holding his left side like his ribs hurt. She made notes on her tablet. How long has he been living with this stepfather? 3 years since Rebecca married Marcus. And have you noticed changes in Ethan's behavior during that time? I thought about Thanksgiving dinner, how quiet Ethan had been. The fishing trip last summer, when he'd flinched at a loud noise, the careful way he moved, like someone who'd learned to make himself small and invisible. Yes, he's become withdrawn, careful, like he's walking on eggshells all the time. The nurse nodded, still making notes. Mr. Reed, I'm required by law to report suspected child abuse. Based on what you've told me and Ethan's condition, I'll be contacting Child Protective Services and the Portland Police Department tonight. Good. That son of a bitch nearly killed my grandson. She looked up from her tablet. The boy is lucky you arrived when you did. Another hour, maybe 2, and we'd be having a very different conversation. The reality of those words hit me like a punch. If I'd stayed home in Bar Harbor, if I'd let the storm keep me away, if I'd arrived 30 minutes later, I sat down heavily in one of the plastic chairs. My hands were shaking, not from cold, but from the adrenaline finally wearing off and leaving behind exhaustion and delayed shock. Can I see him? Not yet. They're still working to raise his core temperature safely. Warming has to be done gradually, or it can cause cardiac arrest. She paused at the door. But Mr. Reed, you saved his life tonight. Remember that. After she left, I sat alone in that small room and pulled out my phone. 3 missed calls from Rebecca's number, 2 voicemails. I listened to the first one. Dad, please call me back. Marcus is furious. He's saying you had no right to take Ethan. He's talking about calling his lawyer. And please just call me so we can work this out as a family. I deleted it and played the second one. Dad, you don't understand what it's like. Marcus has been under a lot of stress at work, and Ethan can be so difficult sometimes. He doesn't mean to push Marcus's buttons, but he does. And then Marcus just, her voice cracked. Please bring him home. We can all sit down and talk about this, like adults. We can make this work. I deleted that one too and turned off the phone. There was nothing to work out, nothing to discuss. Ethan wasn't going back to that house. And if Rebecca wanted to see her son again, She'd have to choose him over the man who'd nearly killed him. A uniformed police officer appeared in the doorway 40 minutes later. Young guy, maybe 30, with the careful, neutral expression of someone who'd responded to too many domestic situations. "Mr. Reed, I'm Officer Chen with Portland PD. The hospital called about a possible child endangerment case." I went through the story again, adding details this time. The locked garage door, the temperature readings from my truck, the way Marcus had defended his actions as teaching responsibility, the dinner table set with prime rib and wine, while Ethan froze 15 feet away. Officer Chen took notes, his expression growing grimmer with each detail. "And the boy's mother was present during all this? Sitting at the dinner table, eating and drinking like nothing was wrong. Did she attempt to intervene, to get the boy inside?" "Not that I saw. She claims Marcus makes the rules and she has to support him." The officer flipped back through his notes. "You mentioned other injuries, bruises, a cut. Do you know how he got those?" "No, but I can guess. This wasn't the first time Marcus has punished him like this. Ethan said something about the garage being a regular thing. We'll need to talk to Ethan when he's stable." Officer Chen closed his notebook. "Mr. Reed, I want to be straight with you. Cases like this can be complicated. The boy's 16, not a small child. The stepfather will claim it was discipline, not abuse. Without the boy's testimony and willingness to press charges, it might be hard to make anything stick. What about attempted manslaughter, reckless endangerment? Possible. But again, it depends on Ethan's testimony and whether the DA thinks there's enough evidence for criminal charges." He paused. "The good news is, CPS will definitely investigate. Even if criminal charges don't stick, they can remove the boy from the home if they determine he's in danger." Subscribe and stay tuned so you don't miss any true revenge stories. Sometimes, even silence is the strongest form of revenge. A doctor appeared in the hallway, the same young one who'd taken Ethan's vitals earlier. He looked tired but slightly less grim. "Mr. Reed, your grandson's temperature is up to 94 degrees. Still hypothermic, but stable. We're continuing warming protocols, but he's going to be okay." The relief that washed over me nearly buckled my knees. "Can I see him?" "Yes, but keep it brief. He needs rest, and we need to monitor him closely for the next few hours." Officer Chen followed me to the trauma room, where they'd moved Ethan. My grandson looked small in the hospital bed, covered with heated blankets and hooked up to monitors that beeped steadily. His color was better, lips pink again, instead of that terrifying purple-gray, but he was still shaking slightly. "Hey, Grandpa." His voice was hoarse, but stronger than before. "Hey, son." I pulled a chair close to the bed and took his hand. "How are you feeling?" "Warm. Finally warm." He squeezed my hand weakly. "They said I could have died." "Yeah, you could have. Why didn't she come?" The question was barely a whisper. "Mom, why didn't she come with us?" I had no good answer for that. No way to explain why a mother would choose her husband over her son's safety. No way to make sense of it that wouldn't break his heart even more than it already was. "I don't know, Ethan. I wish I did." Officer Chen stepped forward. "Ethan, I'm with the Portland police. I need to ask you some questions about what happened tonight. Are you up for that?" Ethan looked at me, and I nodded. "It's okay. Tell him the truth." For the next 20 minutes, Ethan described life with Marcus Coleman, the escalating punishments for minor infractions, the time he'd been locked in the basement overnight for forgetting to take out the trash, the meals he'd missed because he hadn't done his chores perfectly, the verbal abuse, being called stupid, worthless, a burden. Officer Chen's expression remained neutral, but I could see the anger in his eyes. This wasn't discipline. This was systematic abuse. "Did your mother know about these punishments?" the officer asked. "Yeah. She'd try to argue with him at first, but Marcus would tell her to stay out of it, that he was the man of the house, and Ethan was his responsibility now." Ethan's voice got smaller. After a while, she stopped arguing, just started making excuses for him. "Has Marcus ever physically struck you?" Ethan hesitated, and I knew the answer before he spoke. A few times. Nothing major. Slap across the face. Push against the wall. He's careful not to leave marks where people can see the bruises I'd seen on his arms. The careful way he moved. All of it adding up to a picture of sustained, calculated abuse. Ethan, Officer Chen said gently, I need to know, do you want to press charges against your stepfather? My grandson looked at me again, fear and hope warring in his expression. What would happen to him, to Mom? Marcus could be charged with child endangerment, reckless endangerment, possibly assault. If convicted, he could face jail time. Your mother, that depends on whether we can prove she was complicit in the abuse or just a bystander who failed to protect you. I don't want to hurt my mom. Ethan's voice cracked. She's not a bad person. She's just scared of being alone. I squeezed his hand. Son, your mother made choices. She chose not to protect you. That's on her, not you. Your grandfather's right, Officer Chen said. You're not responsible for the adults in your life. They're responsible for keeping you safe. They failed. Ethan was quiet for a long moment, staring at the ceiling tiles. When he spoke again, his voice was steady. I want to press charges, not for revenge, but because if he did this to me, he might do it to someone else. To Dylan, maybe, if I'm not there anymore. Dylan, the 12-year-old stepbrother I'd barely thought about in all this chaos. Marcus's biological son, who'd been sitting at that dinner table laughing while Ethan froze. You think Marcus would hurt Dylan too? I asked. I don't know. Dylan's his real kid, so maybe not. But if I'm gone and Dylan makes a mistake, Ethan shrugged, I just don't want anyone else to go through what I did. Officer Chen made more notes. That's very brave, Ethan. I'll start the paperwork for charges tonight. A detective will follow up with you in a day or two to get a full statement. After the officer left, Ethan and I sat in silence for a while, listening to the monitor's beep and the muted sounds of the ER beyond the closed door. Grandpa? Ethan's voice was small again. Can I really come live with you? Like permanently? Yes, as long as you want to. My house is your house. What about school? All my stuff? We'll figure it out. There's a good high school in Bar Harbor. We'll get your transcripts transferred. As for your stuff, we'll arrange to pick it up when Marcus isn't home. He's not going to let me go that easily. He'll fight it. He likes having control. Let him fight. He nearly killed you tonight, Ethan. No judge in their right mind would send you back to that house. The doctor appeared in the doorway again. Mr. Reed, we're going to admit Ethan overnight for observation. His temperature is almost normal now, but we want to make sure there are no complications. You're welcome to stay, but visiting hours end at 9. I looked at my grandson, at this brave kid who'd survived 6 hours in a freezing garage and was now facing the collapse of his family with more strength than most adults could manage. I'm not leaving him. The doctor smiled slightly. I thought you might say that. We'll bring in a chair that reclines. Won't be comfortable, but you can stay. After they settled Ethan into a regular room on the pediatric floor, I called my neighbor in Bar Harbor to check on my house. Then I sent a single text to Rebecca. Ethan is in Maine Medical Center. Severe hypothermia. He could have died. He's staying with me when he's discharged. If you want to see him, come alone. Marcus is not welcome. The response came 15 minutes later. How dare you threaten me about seeing my own son? Marcus is my husband. Where I go, he goes. We'll be there tomorrow to bring Ethan home where he belongs. I stared at that message, feeling a cold fury settle in my chest. After everything that had happened, after her son nearly died, she was still choosing Marcus. I typed back, if Marcus shows up at this hospital, I will have him arrested for attempted murder. Try me. No response came. I turned off my phone and settled into the uncomfortable reclining chair beside Ethan's bed. Through the window, I could see the storm still raging, snow piling up against the glass. But inside, in this small hospital room, it was warm and safe. Ethan was already asleep, his breathing steady and peaceful for the first time in who knows how long. I thought about Dorothy, about how she would have handled this situation. She'd always been better with family drama, better at seeing the humanity in people even when they made terrible choices. But Dorothy was gone, and I was done trying to see Marcus's humanity. Some people didn't deserve understanding. They deserved consequences. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, CPS investigations, police interviews, possibly a custody fight if Rebecca decided to lawyer up. But tonight, my grandson was safe, warm, and alive. That was enough. 3 days later, I sat in a cramped office at the Department of Health and Human Services, across the desk from a tired-looking woman named Sandra Morris, who had been assigned as Ethan's caseworker. "Mr. Reed, I've reviewed the police reports and hospital records. I've also interviewed Ethan, your daughter, and Mr. Coleman." She shuffled papers on her desk. "This is a complicated situation." "It's not complicated. Marcus Coleman left a 16-year-old in freezing weather for 6 hours. That's child endangerment." "I agree. But the challenge is proving a pattern of abuse versus an isolated incident of poor judgment." She pulled out a file. "Mr. Coleman claims this was the first time he'd used this type of punishment. He says he misjudged how cold it would get and takes full responsibility for his mistake." "That's a lie. Ethan told you about the other times, the basement, the missed meals, all of it." "He did, but without physical evidence or witnesses. It's his word against Mr. Coleman's." Sandra leaned forward. "Here's what I can tell you. Based on Ethan's testimony and the medical evidence from Christmas Eve, I'm recommending that Ethan not be returned to his mother's home while Mr. Coleman is living there." "Good. However, your daughter has legal custody. If she wants Ethan back and can demonstrate a safe environment, we can't prevent that." "What about what Ethan wants? He's 16, almost 17. Doesn't he get a say?" "Maine law allows courts to consider a minor's preference in custody matters, especially at his age. But ultimately, parents have rights that are hard to overcome unless we can prove they're unfit." I felt frustration building in my chest. She let her husband nearly kill her son. Doesn't that prove she's unfit? It proves she made a terrible judgment call. But Miss Coleman is claiming he's the one at fault, that Rebecca didn't know how serious the situation was. Sandra pulled out another document. "I've reviewed your background. 20 years Navy service, honorable discharge, stable income from your pension and consulting work, owned home, no criminal record. You're an ideal guardian from a legal standpoint. So what happens now?" "I'm recommending that Ethan remain in your custody while we investigate further. Your daughter has agreed not to contest this temporarily, but she wants regular visitation, only if Marcus isn't present. That's already been stipulated. She can visit Ethan at your home or neutral locations, but Mr. Coleman is not permitted contact while the investigation is ongoing." Sandra closed the file. "Mr. Reed, I want to be honest with you. Unless criminal charges are filed and stick, Marcus Coleman probably won't face serious legal consequences. The system isn't designed to punish poor parenting, only to prevent ongoing harm to children." "What about justice? What about accountability?" "Sometimes those things don't come from the legal system. Sometimes they come from families making hard choices and sticking to them." She stood up, signaling the meeting was over. "Take care of your grandson. Make sure he gets counseling. I'll provide referral, and prepare for the possibility that your daughter might choose her husband over her son permanently." The possibility, as if it wasn't already reality. Back at the hospital, Ethan was being discharged that afternoon. I found my grandson dressed in clothes I'd brought from home, sitting on the bed and filling out paperwork with a nurse. "Hey, Grandpa, they said I can leave in an hour." "Good. The truck's already packed with your stuff." I'd made a trip to Rebecca's house the previous day while Marcus was at work, collecting Ethan's belongings with a police escort. The officers had documented the room where Ethan slept, barely bigger than a closet, coldest room in the house. No heat vent, and taken photos that would become part of the investigation file. Rebecca had been there watching silently as I packed her son's life into garbage bags. She'd tried to speak to me once, but I'd cut her off with a look. There was nothing she could say that would make this better. "Did you talk to the CPS lady?" Ethan asked after the nurse left. "Yeah, You're staying with me. Your mother can visit, but Marcus can't come near you. Will there be criminal charges against Marcus? The DA is reviewing the case. Officer Chen thinks they'll at least charge him with reckless endangerment. I sat down beside him on the bed. But Ethan, even if the charges don't stick, you're not going back there. Ever. What about Mom? Do you think she'll ever leave him? He meant. Choose her son over her husband. Stand up for what was right instead of what was comfortable. I don't know, son. I hope so. But that's her choice to make, not ours to force. We sat in silence for a moment. Then Ethan asked quietly, do you think Grandma Dorothy would be disappointed in Mom, in how she handled this? The question hit me hard. Dorothy, with her kind heart and infinite patience, who'd loved Rebecca more than life itself. Your grandma would be heartbroken, I said honestly, but she'd also understand that people make mistakes when they're scared. She'd hope your mom would find her way back to doing the right thing. Do you think she will? I think that's up to her. The drive back to Bar Harbor took 3 hours through cleared roads and weak winter sunshine. Ethan slept most of the way, exhausted from the hospital stay and everything that had happened. I drove carefully, watching him in the passenger seat and thinking about the future. A teenage boy who'd been through trauma, a daughter who'd chosen wrong and might never choose right, a life that had become unexpectedly complicated in my retirement years, but also a grandson who was safe, a chance to make up for mistakes I'd made as a father by doing better as a grandfather, a purpose that had been missing since Dorothy died. We pulled into my driveway as the sun was setting, painting the snow orange and pink. The house looked small and ordinary, nothing special, but it was warm, it was safe, and it was home. Welcome home, Ethan, I said as we climbed out of the truck. He looked at the house, at the snow-covered yard, at the ocean visible in the distance. Then he smiled, really smiled, for the first time since Christmas Eve. Yeah, he said, home. 6 months later, spring had melted the snow and brought new life to Bar Harbor. I stood in my driveway, watching Ethan practice parallel parking in my truck under the supervision of his driving instructor. He'd grown 3 more inches since moving in with me, started eating properly, sleeping through the night, laughing at stupid jokes. The haunted look had faded from his eyes, replaced by something that looked like peace. Little more to the left, the instructor called out, "Good, now straighten out." Ethan completed the maneuver perfectly and grinned at me through the windshield. Next week was his driving test, and then he'd have his license, freedom, independence, all the things 16-year-olds should have. Inside, my phone rang. I answered it without checking the caller ID. "Dad," Rebecca's voice, tentative and uncertain. "It's me." We'd spoken maybe 5 times since Christmas Eve, brief, uncomfortable conversations about logistics and visitation schedules. She'd visited Ethan 3 times, awkward afternoons, where she tried to act like nothing had changed, and he politely went through the motions. "What do you need, Rebecca? I wanted to tell you something. Before you heard it from someone else." A pause. "I filed for divorce from Marcus. Papers were served yesterday." I sat down on the porch steps, processing this information. What changed? I saw the photos, the ones the police took of Ethan's room, the temperature readings, the medical reports. Her voice cracked, and I realized that I'd become someone I didn't recognize, someone who'd let her son almost die because she was too scared to be alone. "You should tell this to Ethan, not me. If he'll listen. I know I don't deserve his forgiveness, but I want to try to earn it back." Through the window, I could see Ethan laughing with the driving instructor, probably joking about something, happy, healthy, healing. "It's going to take time, Rebecca, a lot of time." "I know, but I have time now. Marcus is moving back to Boston. The house is going on the market. I'm getting an apartment in Portland, something small, starting over. Good. Dad, her voice got smaller. Do you think eventually I could see Ethan more? Maybe have him visit overnight? I know I don't deserve it, but that's up to him, not me. He's the one you hurt. He's the one who gets to decide if and when he forgives you. That's fair. A pause. I miss him. I miss both of you. Then prove it, not with words, but with actions. Show him that you choose him. Not just this week or this month, but every day for the rest of your life. After I hung up, Ethan came bounding over, instructor's evaluation sheet in hand. I did it. She says I'm ready for the test. That's great, son. I'm proud of you. He sat beside me on the steps, and we watched the sun set over the harbor, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. That was Mom on the phone, wasn't it? Smart kid. Always had been. Yeah. She left Marcus, filed for divorce. Ethan was quiet for a moment. Is she okay? Even after everything, his first thought was for his mother. That's the kind of person he was. Kind, empathetic, able to see beyond his own hurt. She says she is. She wants to see you more. When you're ready. Maybe. He picked at a piece of paint peeling from the porch step. I'm still angry at her. For choosing him. For not protecting me. You have every right to be angry. But she's still my mom. And I miss her too. The mom she used to be. Before Marcus. I put my arm around his shoulders. Then maybe eventually, you'll give her a chance to be that person again. But only when you're ready. No pressure. No timeline. We sat together as the stars came out. Grandfather and grandson. Survivors of a storm that had nearly destroyed us both. The house behind us was warm and bright. The future ahead, uncertain, but full of possibility. And for now, that was enough. Thank you for watching. If this story showed you a different face of justice, like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. See you in the next revenge story.